Welcome to Stripling Stories, where belief meets action. These are the raw, unfiltered conversations with those who have ran towards potential for the sake of opportunity, responsibility, or inner calling. Join us as we learn about how they have been tested and refined through their life experience and glean from their wisdom on how we can change ourselves to make our world stronger. So, this is John Lyons. He is one of my best friends. This interview is coming from Stripling, and let's get down to it. Okay, John, do you want to give yourself a 30-second intro? I would define you as the world's foremost horseman, horse whisperer. I would simplify it to that. But so for those people that don't know you and don't know horses or anything, how would you define yourself to those people so that they understand who you are?
Well, I have been given clinics and helping people with problem horses for the last 45 years professionally, and I've traveled not all around the world, but I've traveled a few different countries. And in the United States, I'm known as America's most trusted horseman. But stronger than that, I'm known as a Christian in the horse industry, and hopefully I encourage more trainers and more people and the horse industry to accept Christ in their life. And I was asked to do quite a few church services and large expos, and where I was doing demonstrations and that. But really, they dubbed me America's most trusted horseman, through the years. So hopefully I've, when I started into the horse business, verses put on ads and church services at horse shows and at expos. The few expos that there were non-existent, and hopefully I encourage people to share their faith, and that's really all that God asks us to do. Or one of the main things. It's not all that He asks us to do, but He certainly asks us to share, what He has done in our lives, with other people, so that they can also begin to have a relationship, or hopefully have a relationship, to understand that He is really, really real. He's important. He loves us and He cares about us a great deal, and that we fall short of His expectations, which is being perfect. And so we call that sin. He calls that sin. The root word of sin is separation. So it just means that when we don't follow what He asks us to do, and we commit sin in our life, when we do things we know that are wrong, that we know that we're not good, then we are separated from having that relationship with Him. And the way to end that separation and to have a relationship, a friendship, like Bruce and I have, a friendship. It's not, it's not just, well, I know him. It's that he knows me and I know him, and we have a friendship. And God mentions that a great deal in the New Testament and the Bible. In fact, Jesus said, if you recognize me before my Father in heaven, I will recognize you as my friend. So friendship is critical to both Jesus and to both our Father in heaven. So that's one of my first questions that I was going to ask you is, what does it mean to you to walk with God? What inspired me to walk with God?
No. What does it mean to you to walk with God?
What does it mean to me to walk with God? It gives me purpose in my life. It gives some kind of meaning to my life. If if I don't have a meaning, if I don't have a reason to get up in the morning, then we sit on the couch and we die.
Mm-hmm.
So nothing else in life gives us a strong enough meaning in life to go through life. If it's money, well, okay, so for a number of years we strive to make money, but then when we find out that money's not really the answer. Money is a two-edged sword. Money, you don't have it, that hurts. Money, when you do have it, you worry about it. And so we find out that money leaves us empty, like awards or winning.
Yeah, I say money or awards, those things are amplifiers. They're amplifiers of who we are inside, for good or bad. But if you see somebody that you perceive because of your relationship with Christ, is you see somebody and you say, now there's a person that's walking with God. How do you perceive that?
How do I perceive it? I don't have to perceive it. It comes off of them like sunlight. So it's visible in their life. They don't have to tell me they're a Christian. If they have to tell me they're a Christian, then it makes me wonder if they're a Christian.
Right.
So, I
love that. It comes off of them like sunlight. I like that.
So
that's beautiful. Okay, so here's a question. When did you first realize that your life wasn't your own and that it was meant for a higher purpose?
When I was about 7 years old, somewhere in there,
okay.
I had a rabbit, and I loved this rabbit. All right, it was like a little kid. I get a rabbit. I love the rabbit.
Mm-hmm.
So we lived in Phoenix at the time, and we had a backyard. And I ended up building a cage for this rabbit
mm-hmm.
in my backyard. All right, and it's a chicken wire cage. It's on the grass where he can hop around,
move
eat
around,
grass, and do all that stuff. Right.
Yeah.
So I go out there probably the next day after I build this cage, and he's gone. Well, now I'm upset, and I'm crying. I'm really upset. I look everywhere for that rabbit. I look under every bush. I look everywhere in that yard, and I can't find it. Now again, I'm just a little kid, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I come in the house, and the back door, and the kitchen was there. My mom's doing dishes, and I'm crying, and she's up, and she says, "Well, Johnny, what's wrong?" And I said, "I can't find my rabbit. I'm looking everywhere. I can't find my rabbit." She says to me, "Well, go in your bedroom, get down on your knees, and ask God, to tell you or show you what happened to your rabbit."
Mm-hmm.
So I do. And in a few minutes, I come walking out. I don't say a word to my mom. I walk out through the back door. I walk around the corner of the house. I crawl underneath the bush, and there's a piece of my rabbit. So now I've lost my rabbit. Now I'm really upset, right?
Right.
My rabbit is dead. A dog, something got my rabbit. And so I come back in the house, and now I'm even more upset and crying. And my mom says, "What's wrong?" And I tell her, "I found my rabbit. He's dead." And she says, "Well, Johnny, you didn't ask God to save your rabbit. You asked God, to show you what happened to your rabbit." For some reason, Bruce, at that moment, I realized how close God was. He's not somewhere far off. And I'm sure there were way more important things in the world that were going on right then than a little boy and a stupid rabbit. But he answered that prayer. And it was instantaneous, and there was no doubt, that he answered that. And so from that moment on in my life, I recognized God had something important for me to do.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to save somebody. It wasn't that I was going to do something miraculous and I was going to be important for God.
Right.
It was what I was going to do is I was going to save Bruce from a car going by, and Bruce was going to go on and do something great for God. So that's how I perceived it. So I knew God had, I knew he was close.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that he had something, he had a purpose for my life, So from that age, I knew he had a purpose for my life. I didn't find out that purpose until I was about 45, maybe 50 years old. And the purpose, I started the concept of a symposium in the horse industry. And the symposium was where a group of people get together, eat and drink, and share ideas, all right, about the training.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a concept of bringing people together, and showing, me teaching, people sharing ideas about training and the principles of training. Well, when I started that concept, which is in 1988, I started it with a church service. It was a whole weekend, and the weekend started on Saturday morning, and then I worked with an unbroke horse, and then so I worked with horses in front of the audience all Saturday, and then Sunday morning we had a church service, which was not heard of at that time. That symposium concept really wasn't heard of. So what I did is I hired either local ministers or I flew in ministers to do that church service. All right. Well, about 3 or 4 years into it, I'm having it's Sunday morning. We've got a church service going on. This minister's doing the church service. I'm sitting on the back row. I'm actually sitting I'm sitting in the back row down in chairs, and at one end of the arena, the sun is coming through the trees. I look up and there's probably 50 cowboys sitting on the fence. And there's 100 or 150, whatever, number of people in the audience.
Right.
They're listening to this minister do a church service at a horse program, a horse educational program. And at that moment, sitting in that chair, it was like this overwhelming feeling that that's what God wanted me to do. It wasn't to give the church service, it was to provide it. He said, this is what your purpose was in life, was to provide that church service, that opening, for Christ to be introduced more so in the horse industry. And that certainly, I don't have to be the builder of the house. I just have to be willing, to put a nail in it. So it wasn't how important I was to the horse industry. I just got the first nail started.
Okay, now that is interesting because this is entirely new. Nobody in the world right now knows or even cares who I am. There's people that know you, but everything that you just said resonates with me because what I'm doing, I don't feel like I'm supposed to be the face of any of it. I'm supposed to be the person that brings it together and cheerleads it.
Right.
I got to have my face out there sometimes, but I really appreciate that story because that helps me. So thank you.
Does it take courage to do that?
Yeah, it actually takes a lot of courage because you can't do both things. Like one of my favorite phrases is you pick up a stick, you pick up both ends of it, right? The good and the hard, or the easy and the hard side, what you want and what you don't want, you get all of it. And so you can't do something like what you did and felt inspired to do without, people look at what you did do and they don't look at what you sacrificed in the process of doing that. There's both ends of that. Yeah, there's a great deal of sacrifice that goes into those things. And
Well, it takes courage
okay.
because at the very first symposium, it was in Santa Barbara in 1988, I had been doing clinics up to then. Well, in clinics, I'd have anywhere from 10 to 15 horses in the clinic, and they would be from unbroke horses, problem horses, to performance horses. All kinds of different kinds of horses. And so, and the clinics were 5 days long, so I had 5 days to prove that I knew what I knew with horses. All right, and I had 10, 15 horses to prove it with.
Right.
All right. Well, when I started the symposiums, that wasn't the case. I had one horse, or like one unbroke horse, for an example, that had never been started, wasn't, maybe it was halter broke, maybe it wasn't even halter broke, and even then the very first horse wasn't. So I'm in Santa Barbara, I'm behind the stands, we have a grand entry, and because I've arranged that, we have booth space there, we have people there, we have 150 people there, all right? And I'm going to walk out, and on that sheet of paper that they have a schedule, that at 9 o'clock I'm going to walk into the arena, or 9:30 by the time the grand entry is over, and it starts at 9 o'clock. So I'll introduce myself to da-da-da. The horse is already in the round pen in the arena, and then at 10 o'clock I'm going to, or about somewhere in there, I'm going to bring the owner out. The owner's going to talk about the horse and explain to the audience, what it was all about, or what the horse, had done to it, hadn't had done to it. In this case, it was a Mustang. So at 10 o'clock, about or a little bit later, I'm going to start with this unbroke horse, and the unbroke horse, the first one, happened to be a Mustang. And it wasn't halter broke. They drove the trailer into the arena and jumped the horse out of the back of the trailer and into the round pen. So at 12 o'clock, we're having lunch.
Not an easy task.
No, and so at 12 o'clock, we're having lunch. That's the schedule. It's written down. They got it in their hand. And so I know that. And I'm at the end of the stands, down below the stands before they introduce me, and I'm thinking, what if? What if I can't do this? Now, everybody in the stands, most of the people in the stands are going to prove that I don't know what I'm doing, that I'm not as good as I say I am, that I can't do what I say that I can do. They're not there to root me on, they're there, well, I disagree with that comment, I disagree with this comment, I disagree with that. So they're going to look just naturally. They don't mean to be mean, they just are going to look to question what I believe, what I'm doing, with this horse. So I know that.
So that takes a greater amount of courage because of knowing the psychology and everything that you're stepping into with a difficult horse to begin with.
Right.
Okay.
And so the question is, can I do this? Can I do this with this horse? So my prayer, and it ended up being my prayer throughout all of the years that I walked out in front of an audience, it always stayed the same. God, don't let them see me, but let them see you through me. So I walked out there.
Now, I don't know how well the audio is going to pick up here. My microphone didn't work. I want you to say that one more time, because what you just said is the essence of what I'm trying to do with Stripling. Okay? And that's one of the reasons this funky looking sword is here. So say that one more time, but say that to them, for each person that's watching.
So I had a doubt in my mind whether I could really pull this off. Could I do it? Could I do it with this horse? Could I do it? it was a finite amount of time. I had to be at a certain place with this horse. I had to be riding this horse outside in the arena, and I had less than 2 hours to do it. And so the question is, can I do this? What if I can't do this? Here they know that I'm a Christian. I have said we're going to have a church service, tomorrow morning, Sunday morning. So now I'm not representing John Lyons, I'm representing Christ. So can I do this, with this unbroke horse, this Mustang? And so my prayer was, before I walked out in front of that audience, my prayer was, God, please help me. Don't let them see me. Let them see you through me. So for the next whatever number of years, 30, 40 years, that I've been doing this, that has consistently been my prayer. When I go out to do a church service, when I go out, to work with a horse, when I go out to do something in front of an audience and speak to an audience, then that is always my prayer. I don't want them to see John Lyons. John Lyons has got a bucket load of flaws. He's not perfect. He's not even a good Christian boy. He's not, and so there's times that I was close to Christ in my life. There's times that I was a teenager and I was having a good time, or I was in college and I was having a great time, right. Or after I was married and I made mistakes and wasn't close to Christ.
Right.
So the relationship, we expect our relationship to stay the same all the time. And even our relationship.
Don't we expect that out of all relationships? In our own minds, we always expect them to stay the same, but that's not reality.
No, we grow. You grow at different rates than I do. You have different things that are important to you at different times in your life, and I'm going to have things that are different, of important things in different times in my life. So what we need to do, we don't need to be together every day, but we need to touch base.
Right.
We need, to feel like we can call, and the friendship hasn't changed.
Right.
Maybe the environment has changed. Maybe one has grown and learned something that maybe you had a chance to learn something that I haven't had a chance to learn yet. So your faith has grown. You're closer to God at that moment, that day than I am. Mm-hmm. So a friendship is a friendship.
So everybody remember, that's probably one of the biggest nuggets first, is if you're seeking to fulfill, our purpose is your potential. So if you're seeking to fulfill your potential as God sees it and what He wants to do through you, that prayer, that's a big deal. God, don't let them see me, let them see you through me. I love that. So thank you for sharing that. That's huge. That actually kind of answers a couple of the other questions I had anyway, right in there in the intro. So what role has God played in your ability to work with horses?
Oh, a great deal, because Bruce, what he says to us, he doesn't say to us, I want you to be a disciple. I want you to be a missionary. He doesn't say that to us. He doesn't say, John, I want you to be a welder, or I want you to be, this part of the church. He says, John, what is it that gets you excited? Okay. What motivates you to get you out of bed in the morning? What turns your crank? Mm-hmm. That's what he says. He says, I have created so much to make you happy. What is it you want to do? Come on, John, what do you want to do? And then,
kind of like I am with my kids.
Right. And then what he says, because you're a father, and you don't say to them, you want them to grow up and be a dentist, right?
Not at all.
Not at all. You say, don't do that. So So with that, he says, what is it that you would love to do? What would you like to do? And let's go do it together. So through the horses, the horse is God's most favorite animal on earth. I believe that.
Okay.
He created the horse.
Wait, the horse is God's most what animal?
Favorite
Animal
on earth.
To all you cat and dog lovers.
Well,
all right, keep going. Now you gotta back up the words.
He mentions horses 360 something times in the Bible.
Okay.
He mentions dogs 41 times. Cats 0. So that's not my fault, Bruce. It's not my fault. So
for all the people that love watching cat YouTube videos, that's funny.
That's great. He created them, so if you like them, great.
All right. So the role that God has played in your ability to work with horses.
He teaches, through the years, he's taught me that, for example, characteristics that he put in the horse because he likes the horse.
Okay.
He put in a very, very strong social order. All right. He's a God of order, details. Okay. So, and that order, that social order can change. He likes togetherness. So he made the horse, a herd animal.
Mm-hmm.
Which
humans are very much that way as well.
Right, exactly. He wants us to be together,
I will tell you, it's one of my favorite things that my wife and I like is when you drive by and you see two horses and they're just sitting there. They're not doing anything. They're just sitting there with their necks right next to each other.
Right.
They're facing each other. They're not side by side walking. They're not pulling a load. They're just with each other. There's something about that. Anyway, I needed to let you know that's one of my favorite things about horses.
Good. Pretty cool.
It is.
Well, God's forgiveness. He put the exact same type of forgiveness in the horse that he gives us. So he said, okay, he made the horse extremely adaptable. And so he can fit at any time in his life. There's horses throughout every country in the world. All right. So they can adapt and live. They can live, at your house. They could live at mine. They can live under your umbrella, how you want them to live. If you want them to live in a 40-acre pasture and never see them, they can be fine with that.
Right.
If you want them to live in the house with you, they can live in the house with you.
Okay, so I'm going to say when it comes to horses, the horse characteristics, social order, so there's togetherness, that herd effect, forgiveness and adaptability. I would say it's really interesting when you talk about those first three things, that togetherness, we have to be willing to get out of our own shell. We have to become less selfish, meaning self-centered, self-thinking. To do that, we have to, and I talked with one of my daughters about that this morning, so that's interesting. Forgiveness, we're all capable of it, and it's especially utilizing the atonement of Jesus Christ. It's easier to do that through Christ. But even people who don't believe in God, when we embrace what it takes to forgive, there's power in that and there's peace in it. But it's not something that's utilized very much in humanity, at least today. It doesn't seem prevalent in society. But forgiveness is a huge power that's overlooked. And then adaptability, that's that whole, what do they call it? The growth mindset versus like a limited, like you're stuck and you can't do anything versus you can grow. I can't remember the differences in those terms, but that adaptability is that growth ability. Like, yeah, it's possible. Let's go. I can be here. I can be there. I can do whatever I need to do, and I can be happy. So we have that ability too, just like the horses, if we get our selfish side out of the way.
Right. And so let's take adaptability and merge it with memory.
Okay.
All right, so a characteristic of the horse, one of the characteristics that God really likes, is he likes us to be adaptable, right? Moldable.
He does.
Changeable.
Yes.
Right? To change in our lives.
Yep.
He doesn't like stubborn.
Nope.
Now, stubborn, people will use the word stubborn when they're talking about a horse. This horse is stubborn, right? Completely impossible, because you can take a horse, you can prove that a horse is adaptable by taking a horse that, let's say, has been abused for a number of years, let's say 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
He's been abused, and then come in, start working with that horse, and within an hour or two, that horse changes to the environment that he's at that moment. Let's say that...
So they let go of the past. Again, going back to the forgiveness side of it.
Let go of the past. That's an interesting statement. In order to let go of the past, he has to remember the past.
Okay.
So what is the memory on a horse? Well, it's easy to prove that a horse has a memory 5, 10, 15 years. And how that's easy to prove is, let's say that we take a horse and we break it to ride. We teach it that it can be ridden, all of those things, which has to overcome fear to do that. The horse does. But anyway, so he's ridden, and maybe he's well broke. Nice, well-trained horse. But we don't touch him for 5 years. We didn't need him. We stuck him out in the pasture. Nobody messed with him, etc. But one day we needed him. And we go out there and we get him, we bring him in, we put the saddle on him, we climb on him, and we ride him. Did he forget, over a 5-year period about carrying the saddle, carrying the rider, doing what the rider wanted him to do? And the answer is no. That's pretty amazing. Well, that can actually happen over 10 years or even longer. So that would have to say that the horse has a memory of over 10 years.
So they've got the memory, and including the bad experiences in the past, but they're willing to live in the present and fully embrace it. That's what you're saying.
Oh, that's a cool thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
The present. Isn't that important that when we ask God's forgiveness, he forgives us and he separates us as far as the east is from the west. He separates us that sin forever, because east and west never touch. And then he says he throws them in a bottomless lake, right?
Okay.
But we go get a fishing pole and we start digging up our memories.
Right.
I remember what you said to me 5 years ago, Bruce. I remember
when you offended me and...
Right. Yeah. I remember what I did.
Right.
You don't know what I did. I remember what I did. And so the worst person to forgive is yourself. So God says, when he was on the cross, the very last thing he said is, it is finished.
Right.
All right? It is finished. Well, that what he was talking about is the past. It's over. It's done. It's brand new. It's a brand new day.
Let's move on.
There's 2 days in the year we cannot do anything. The 2 days that we cannot do anything about, we cannot do anything on, that we cannot change, is the past and the future.
Right, yeah. So
we have today. The horse gives us a phenomenal example of how to live in today. There's an old cowboy saying that if you think you're pretty important and you're pretty cool, you're a pretty well-known dentist, you've gone through the education, you're amazing, all of these things, so you're pretty cool. Well, to kind of find out where your importance is call somebody else's dog. And that dog won't come to you. Right. He ain't coming. He says you're not that important. So a dog has an owner. A dog has a master.
Right.
A horse does not. A horse does not. They see you. You represent all mankind to a horse. And a horse never has an owner. It never has a master. And so that's why I could sell you my horse, and my horse would go right with you and start doing the same things with you until you prove you are different than me. All right? So that's what allowed me to take that horse, that very first horse, in that very first symposium,
the Mustang,
walk in that arena, and he looked at me and he said, I see you have changed, because I know how people have treated me in the past, but he doesn't see me as a master or an owner, I represent all mankind to that horse. And so as I start working with him, no matter what had happened to him before, good, bad, or indifferent, because God made him so adaptable, and then he gave him a strong memory, but he also put forgiveness in him. And he said, I see you have changed, so therefore I will not hold the past against you. The horse gives us an ideal example of how to live in the moment.
Of how we can live our own lives.
In the moment.
Yeah.
Live today.
Yeah.
Take inventory. What he says, what God says to you and to me is, John, take inventory. Just right now. Are you okay? Yeah, I'm okay. Are you sick? No. Are you hungry? No. Are you cold? No. Are you hot? No. Are you okay? Just take inventory at this moment.
Right. Because
this is what he gives us. He doesn't give us tomorrow. He doesn't hold yesterday against us.
Right.
He says today. What is it? How are you in this moment? And if we take that, then what happens? We can be at peace. Paul said it in the Bible. He said that when he was in the dungeon and he was going to be killed in the morning, he wasn't getting out of it. He was going to be killed in the morning. He was going to be crucified in the morning, and he was talking to another disciple, and he says, I can be at peace whether I'm in front of kings or I'm in a dungeon and I'm about to be killed. No matter where I am, I can be at peace. Well, how can we do that when we have the bills, when we're fighting with other people, when we're fighting with our wives or our husbands, or how can we be at peace in all situations? God says, take inventory. Am I not still with you? Are you okay? At this moment, are you okay? And the horse teaches us, live in the moment.
Yeah.
Quit worrying about tomorrow. You can't do anything about it.
Right.
Don't try to change yesterday because you can't do anything about it. Today is the only day, and he says, I am with you every single day.
I love that. That's a good reminder.
It is.
Second nugget, right? Okay, so let me look at a couple questions that I have to see which ones you want to hit next. How do you balance influence with humility, especially when others look to you as the expert? Influence and humility.
Influence and humility.
Yep.
Well, the influence that I have is up to other people to gauge and accept. So that's not for me to think about or worry about, or focus on. Humility is understanding that I have spent more time working with horses than many other people. That doesn't make me smarter than them. And that doesn't make me more intelligent than them. That doesn't make me better than them. It just means I studied something different. For example, you and I. You haven't studied horses as much as I have.
Right.
But you've also studied dentistry, right?
Right.
Well, that doesn't make you smarter than me or better than me or a better person than me. So it was very difficult for me to learn to accept somebody's compliment, all right? To learn that, because what I would want to do is say, oh, John, you are so good with this. Your mother must have been a horse, and that kind of stuff. And it was learning not to say a word about that, to accept the compliment, rather than if you give me a compliment and I argue with you, oh, Bruce, I'm not worth that. No, I'm not that good.
A lot of people do that.
Right. We have a tendency to do that. And when we do that, I insult you. I just called you a liar. I just
true.
said to you, I just threw water, on something that was important to you.
Mm-hmm.
So it's learning to accept the compliment as not to hurt the person's feelings, but yet not believe the compliment, not take the compliment in that makes me good or that makes me better. No one knows Bruce.
Right.
No one knows all of Bruce.
True.
Only Christ knows Bruce. And so not even your wife, not anybody.
Mm-hmm.
So the most anybody really knows about you, probably the very most, is 20-30%.
Possibly.
And that would be huge. That would only be your wife. And so most people don't know 3% of you. So they're making a judgment based on what that 3%.
Okay, now what's the other? If we'll say, give her the benefit of the doubt. My wife will say she knows me 30%. It's the most that she could know me. What's going on with that other 70%?
Only Bruce knows, and only Christ knows.
And that's where I would wager that even I don't know. I do believe that Christ knows. I'm not so sure I even know. I think that he knows, and that's where he wants to tap into that and help us hit that 35, 40, and do more with us and through us. Do you think that's a fair
he certainly
idea?
wants us to change the parts that he wants to change.
Yeah.
Right? He wants to change those parts. He wants to change you not picking on you.
Right.
Right? That would be a commonality that we would all have, is that I would pick on John because I know John's faults.
Right.
I know John's thoughts.
And now that's the thing is, so we say in my house all the time, follow your future, you get what you focus on. If you keep focusing on your faults, all you're ever going to see is your faults. God doesn't spend a whole lot of time focusing on our faults. He knows that they're there, but he doesn't focus on them. He tries to focus on our potential, our opportunities. And he wants us to move on that because that's where our strength and our growth is. And he knows that through that, the struggle for that strength and that growth, that's how we become more joy-filled and more useful to him. Both. But how would you see that in your own life or for others, that other 70% or more that we personally can tap into, the 70% that Christ knows about us?
How do we tap into Christ?
No. Okay, so if I've got this much of me, right? Christ knows this much of me. My wife knows this much of me. You know this much of me, and other people in town know this much of me. Okay, well, if my wife knows this much, and Christ knows this much, and I probably know somewhere about half or less.
Christ knows all.
Right, yeah, Christ knows all. So this other gap in here that he knows that I don't know, how do we tap into that? What's he going to do?
We can't tap into what we don't know. We can tap into as we learn things. That we read and we spend time and we search. God says that if you search for me, you'll find me. If you don't search for me, you will never find me.
Now you said it the best way. I think you said it there is we can't tap into that. So Christ knows it, but we can't tap into that information because it's not about us. What we can do is tap into Christ, right?
Right.
Okay, so...
And he reveals the parts of us that are not good.
Correct. And so this is why, for example, I love money stories. I like the story of Job and the struggles that he went through. All Job had to do was never deny God. And he didn't. Satan thought he could get him to, but no matter what he put him through, he couldn't. And Satan had to fold and say, okay, God, you were right. Here's Job back. Do whatever you want. And God blesses him, and he puts him to greater use than he was before. I love that story because it tells me money's not the problem. When people say, oh, rich people this and rich people that money has nothing to do with it. God wanted to do things with Job. He was okay with letting Job get challenged, but then he didn't hold Job back from the growth that Job needed to do so that Job could employ people and make the world a more beautiful place when he was alive. But then you take the rich young ruler in the New Testament, who he's kept all the commandments, right? But so that rich young ruler, he went to tap into Christ, and he said, okay, Christ, I've done all that, or Master, I've done all that since my youth. I've obeyed all these things. What else do I need to do? And he says, he gives that young man his own unique challenge. It's not a challenge he gave to anybody else. He gave it to that one man, knowing that his love was for his wealth, and he was stuck in that a little bit. He said, give up all that you have and come follow me. And he couldn't do it. But then and I could go on about the widow's mite, that's another story. But the idea is that here you have one person God made rich, another person God invited him to be poor. God does different things with us, because what's in that part that we don't know, he wants to bring us closer to him. But the only way we do that is if we can't tap into that unknown information. All we can do is tap into Christ. But if we keep going to Christ and say, okay, now what? What next? What next? He'll give us challenges and struggles. And if we rise to it, we come closer to him. If we don't rise to that challenge, then we're left on our own. Have you noticed that in your life? Or was that too long-winded? I rambled too much, didn't I?
No, you didn't ramble too much. So let's talk about the rich young man.
Sure.
His security was in his money.
Correct.
Christ wanted him to have his security in him.
Correct.
So
whereas with
money,
Job,
the money represented the security.
Correct.
With Nicodemus, his wife and his job and his kids and the pressure his wife put on him was the pressure that wouldn't allow him to accept Christ as most important in his life at that moment, even though he desired it as much as any person could.
He knew it in his heart and he knew it in his mind, didn't he?
But he couldn't let go of his security.
Yeah.
His security happened to be his wife. So whether it's money or your wife or your family, all of those different things, you have to find out, the growth was about, where is your security in life?
Perfect.
So with all of those things, is my security in the horse? Is it in my job? Is it in my
Now, can I pause you on that subject? Because
Sure.
This is going to be important to some people that watch this at some point, when they're going to have a focus on money, and they're going to say, well, I don't know how I'm going to survive tomorrow. And let's say they're smoking, they're drinking, they're gambling, they're whatever. They're semi-wasteful with what resources they've been given. And they say, well, I don't know how I'm going to, or, they just haven't invested their finances well. They haven't been good stewards over their opportunities. And they will say, well, God will take care of me. God will, I don't need to worry about tomorrow because God will take care of it. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think we can't lean on the shovel and pray for a hole. I
say that again, but to the camera so they hear it.
I don't think we can lean on a shovel and pray for a hole and God gives us the hole.
You can't lean on a shovel and pray for a hole and God give you the hole. I like that.
Yeah, so we have to do something. I have to have, money, either the great amounts of it, nor, the having nothing and worrying about tomorrow. Again, what do we put our trust in? And our trust, is really comes from, well, the rich man can lose all of his money tomorrow.
Right.
That has certainly happened.
Yeah.
And the rich man, in fact, it talks about it in the Bible. The higher gates you build, the more you invite thieves in.
Sure.
And so the rich man worries as much, if not more, than the poor man.
Mm-hmm.
So where is the answer in here? Well, again, Paul gives us the answer. My answer, to live in peace today, no matter what my circumstances are, is to focus on Christ.
Right.
What Christ says, is you can't do anything, even though you've amassed these riches from yesterday, that doesn't really take care of you today, and you can't do anything about tomorrow, and are you okay today? So am I okay at the moment?
Mm-hmm.
And what can I do today that's going to help me tomorrow in my life? And I don't even know if I'm going to have tomorrow.
What I like about this conversation is that there is truth in the statement that Christ is always the answer.
Yes.
Christ is always the answer. But the application of that statement is where it gets a little foggy. I think people don't understand how to apply that. And so some of the things that you're saying is how to apply that statement, that Christ is the answer, and here's how you apply it. And so I appreciate your wisdom and knowledge on that. Okay, what legacy do you hope your children and grandchildren will carry forward?
That having a relationship with Christ and knowing that they have a Father in heaven, is the very most important thing in their life. I don't want them, Jody and I have 17 grandkids, and we have 7 kids, of the 7 kids, 4 of them are professional horse trainers. I don't want them to be horse trainers.
Do you mind if they become horse trainers?
I would prefer that I would rather they be dentists. It's less dangerous, and so
Okay.
Every one of them have been hurt, with horses and stuff. So I never encourage them to be horses. People come up to me quite often and say, "Oh, it's so cool because you have a legacy. What a great legacy you have with your kids and some of your grandkids, training horses." No, we don't have a legacy. Christ would not have a legacy if he wasn't directly involved with a little 7-year-old boy and a stupid rabbit.
Right.
He has to prove to us every day, through times in our life, that he's still alive, that he's real. The hardest thing that God has to do is to prove to us individually, prove to Bruce, prove to John, that he's not a figment of somebody's imagination.
Now, but there's plenty of people. So I see God in all sorts of things, especially in the timing of things. But I know a lot of people that really struggle, and they say, well, I would believe in God if I could just see how he influences life, or if I could see his hand. And so you can have 2 people that see the exact same thing, and one person sees God everywhere, and the other one doesn't see God at all.
Well, okay, let's.
So again, I don't think it's God that needs to change. It's us that needs to change so that we are willing to try to see God.
Okay, I will agree with that. And,
Good, because I'm right.
Of course, you're always right.
Not always, but I'm right on that one.
So
it's us that has to change. And that's actually what repentance is.
But we won't change for a cartoon.
True.
We won't change because, unless God has proven himself to you, that he is real. Through miracles in your life, through different things that you've seen.
Again and again, but I'm willing to accept his presence, whereas other people justify it as something else.
Okay, so let's look at that. There was a good, I really don't like Facebook. You can't, especially with AI and the stuff on it, you can't believe anything on it, But there was this real life guy, comedian, that was his job as a comedian, all right? And a friend of his, and the comedian's telling the story, and he's not on stage or anything, he's just telling the story. And he says his friend starts talking to him about the Bible. He says, I don't want to hear about it. I don't believe in it. I don't believe in the Bible. There's nothing I believe about it. I don't want to hear about it.
Right.
You know, and he didn't say he was an atheist, but he came as close to saying it without saying it. All right. So his friend, he says, well, have you ever read the Bible? And he says, no, I don't believe in the Bible. And he says, well, you're not an atheist, you're a moron. So, just because I say there are no teeth in people's head, it doesn't mean that there's no teeth.
Right.
Right? Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Just because I say there is no Disney World, because I've never been to a Disney World, it doesn't bring Disney World into existence or out of existence because I believe in it.
Right.
And like you said, if I don't search for him, even though there are miracles that happen, even though another person walks up and says, I saw this miracle, I am a witness, I know there is a God. There's no way that this could have happened without God intervening and causing that.
Right.
So they witnessed to him. Mm-hmm. They have the ability to take it in or not take it in.
Right.
Right? But God says, if I have the faith of a grain of mustard seed, a mustard seed is a really, really small seed. It's not very much.
It is.
In volume. Now, it grows into a mammoth plant.
Right.
It just does, and puts off a huge amount of humidity, even in the desert. So, but I don't have that, God. I don't have that. I don't have the faith, even as a grain of mustard seed. But he says, John, if you ask me, I will prove my faith to you. If you have the faith the size of a grain of mustard seed.
And that if you will
but let's look at what if we dig deeper into what he says.
Yep.
The word faith, the root word, the beginning word for the root word faith is faithful. Now you would think the word faithful came from the word faith because it's longer, right? And so, but God says no. He says the root word of faith is faithful. So he says, I know you don't believe in me, not even the size of a grain of mustard seed. But if you ask me, said, God, just prove. I don't know if you're real or you're not real. Just prove yourself to me. He says, I will prove myself to you, And so I will prove my faith. So he will even build in us if we ask him. He says, act faithful. Just act faithful.
And this is where I know people personally that have gone through that process. God, just show me. And I want to have the faith. And then they actually have an experience. Now get this. They'll have an experience. They'll recognize it. And then they'll go back to their old ways. And they'll go back to saying, I don't believe. I'm still looking for a miracle. And they literally forget the miracle that they told others about. It's almost like it vanishes from their mind. And they're looking for another one.
But Jesus said that. He said that. He covered that. He said the word, people will hear the word, and like the ground, some of the seed will fall
in that
on
parable.
Good soil,
Okay, and now there is the classic. Who creates the soil?
I don't know.
Okay, so...
Well, I can tell you a story about that, because the scientists figured out that they could take the DNA in soil, and actually create, just like God said, from the earth, I created Adam.
Sure.
Right? And Eve. And so these scientists went up to God and they said, it's not that big a deal. We can do that too. We can take DNA that's mixed in with the dirt and the ground, and we can actually create a human being.
Okay.
God said, great, show me. So they reached down, to grab some dirt. He said, no, you get your own dirt. So So, I don't know who, God created the heavens and the earth and all that's in it.
So I get that.
He separated it, the firmament.
Are you ready for it? Okay, I'm going to pause this for a second. Back at it. Sorry to step away. Back to the soil, and we'll sum up this subject really quick because I want to get these other questions before you got to get back to the ranch. The soil, in my thoughts, we have the responsibility of cultivating, of nurturing our soil as best as possible so that when a seed is given from God and he tries to prove and show himself to us, we're more receptive to it. I think we have control over what our soil is like. And what I mean by our soil, I mean the soil of our minds and the soil of our hearts. If I have a limited or a growth mindset, if I have a hard heart versus a soft and open heart, I think that responsibility is ultimately on me. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree with it 100%.
Well, good, you have to.
And the reason I agree with it is because, you as we get more kids and you have plenty of them.
Yeah.
And I have plenty of them and our kids and even our grandkids, we can give them advice, but if they're not willing to accept it, if they're thinking, well, I know better,
right.
Not that I would ever do that with Christ, that I think I know better how to handle a situation than he does. But even if I did, and I don't, kids don't always take our advice, even though...
Kids hardly ever take our advice.
Right, it's their choice. Isn't it their choice?
Right.
Unfortunately, what we do as people is we give advice. If Bruce comes to me and he asks for my advice, and I know and I've had the experience and I tell him something to do and he doesn't do it, then I resent him for not doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And so 100% I agree with you that we have to be open. Our heart has to be open. Our mind has to be open to do two things. Number one, search for the advice. If I want advice from Bruce, I got to go find him.
Right.
And sometimes he's hard to find. Sometimes he's at the office, sometimes he's at home, sometimes he's camping, sometimes he's somewhere else. But I have to go find him.
Right.
I have to initiate that. Bruce may send me a note and inspire me to look for him, which is what God does through miracles and through our daily living. But then, like he says, if you search for me, you will find me. If you don't look, you ain't gonna find me.
Mm-hmm.
You're not gonna find me anywhere, even though I'm all around you.
Mm-hmm.
So first I have to look for him and be open to his advice. And then whether I like his advice or not, sometimes I don't like it, but I do it. Sometimes I don't like it and I don't do it. Sometimes I like it and I don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't follow through with it.
Right.
So it's all about following through. And so 100%, your analogy of the soil in us, we have to keep, like a garden.
Mm-hmm.
You can't break up the garden once and then
Yep.
feel like it's going to do that. You've done for the next 20 years. You're
Right.
going to have to do it
Right.
again.
Right.
You have to cultivate that garden many, many times, even during the week or during the month or during the season.
And the more you work it, the healthier it is.
Correct.
And the earlier you get started on it, the more you can produce within a season. Yeah.
Correct. And and talking about Daniel in the book of Daniel, when God allowed the Babylonians to come in and wipe out Israel,
Okay.
and they took Daniel with them as a young man, and
Right.
and God said they were going to be captives for 70 years. He made them slaves for 70 years of first, Babylonian and Nebuchadnezzar, and then then they were taken over by Persia and another another group of people, and then finally, I think the Arab world. I'm not sure. I don't, or the Romans. Finally, the Romans. But it was 70 years. There was a reason that God said you would be taken away. You will become slaves for 70 years. It's because God also told them, about the dirt. He said one of his commandments was let the soil rest every 7th year.
Oh.
And they did not do that. They did it for a little bit, but then they quit.
Mm-hmm.
And for the number of weeks or years that they missed, not letting that soil go fallow and let that soil rejuvenate itself and let it rest, that's how he determined the 70 years.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And so there is a point, and he's saying every 7 days, 6 days work. He didn't say 6 days rest, 6 days sit on the couch.
Or 6 days party and 6 days vacation, or
whatever.
6 days. Yeah.
He says on the 7th day rest, right. After you work, not even before you work.
Right.
It's not, I don't get the rest of the day and I'm going to work the rest of the week. No, if you didn't work the rest of the week, you really don't deserve to rest on the Sabbath. But that's another question for God to answer, not for me.
Right.
I don't know the answer to that one. But I do know that he says rest on the Sabbath.
Yeah.
And so with that, we are to let our heart rest. We're to work on our heart, let our heart rejuvenate, keep working that ground, so that we're ready on Monday to start to work for God.
Right. Okay, so this is a mentoring question. How do you mentor or coach men who grew up without a strong father figure?
Example.
Okay.
Examples are far better than words.
I agree.
You
I agree, but they haven't been around you constantly. So what example sticks out the fastest? What example hits home the best?
Caring.
People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, right?
Right. You have to care about the person.
I totally agree with that. Okay. How do you coach someone who feels too broken to lead? This is kind of like the broken horse or the unbroken horse. Somebody that feels too broken to even be a leader, how do you coach that person? Like, they don't even feel capable of leading a horse. Now, the horse is going to be receptive, and we know that. How do you deal with the human side of it when they feel too broken within themselves to step up and be a leader?
Well, Christ gave us examples of that.
Okay.
He didn't meet people where he was. He met people where they were.
Mm-hmm.
And so whether it was the woman at the well, whether it was the woman that was being stoned, whether whether it was the tax collectors, he never asked people to come up to his level. He always came down to their level and met them with what made sense to them at that moment.
Mm-hmm. And then he invites.
Right.
Right, and invite, yeah. It's interesting to me how often people feel like they're too worried about other people judging them, and so they won't step forward into a possibility. It could be the possibility of love. It could be the possibility of a job. It's like they won't step into that possibility because they're spending too much time beating themselves up. Where if they could recognize that they don't have to become different overnight. They just have to make little progress, little bits of change. It's a big deal.
God says that he will never leave us or forsake us, right? He says, I will never leave you. We take that to mean that he will never leave us. But better than that, what he says is, I will always surround you. So we're afraid to share our faith. As an example, in talking, we're afraid. We're in a group of people. We don't think there's a Christian there anywhere. These guys are all cussing. They're taking the Lord's name in vain, whatever it is. But we're just positive we are absolutely the only person there. But because God says, I will never ever leave you, I will surround you, all right? Wherever you are, whoever you're with, I will surround you. What we will find, and this is what you can do, to prove, that God is really real, is in that situation, you got 10 people around you. You say, is there anyone here that believes in Jesus Christ or has accepted Jesus Christ as their Savior?
Right.
Always.
You'll find somebody.
You'll find not only someone. In a crowd, you think there's none, you'll find 5.
Right.
Because God promises you that he will never, ever leave you alone.
Now, I've done the opposite of that. I've had times where I've been with groups that I will actually say, you don't have to participate in this experience, but by show of hands, raise your hand if you've ever felt deeply depressed. 100% of the hands will go up. Okay. Raise your hand if you've ever felt suicidal. And it just jump right into the hard stuff. And you'll have always over 50% where people have had those thoughts. Always, especially young people. And so it's one of those things. Satan doesn't want us to focus on the negative, and Christ doesn't want us to forget the positive. He wants us to know that he's always there. And it reminds me, when you talk about that, also that there's a story in 2 Kings where there's the prophet and his disciple is with him, and they're going through a valley, and then there's the enemy there. And I can't remember the situation, but the prophet prays to have his assistant's eyes opened so he gets to see the angels that are all around on the mountain. Do you remember that story?
I do remember that story. I don't remember exactly where.
I am not a scholar, nor do I do well with all the details, but that reminds me as well. Like, he is always there. He's always surrounding. So if you ever feel like you are alone, if you could open your eyes to see the angelic side of things, I think we would see a completely different reality. Unfortunately, most of us don't get that experience. But
right.
So remembering Christ.
I think that was with Moses and Aaron, but I don't know for sure.
No, that wasn't Moses and Aaron. I don't remember. Like, I'm thinking Elijah, or I don't know.
It might be.
I remember it was in 2 Kings. But then again, maybe I'm wrong on that. It's a great story, though.
It is a great.
Okay, so you recognize that today's societal culture is weak, right? What advice would you give to a young man that's trying to live strong in our weak culture? Do you get that whole question? It's kind of long. Advice to a young man who is struggling and he's trying to live strong in a weak culture. What advice would you give him? I know it's going to come back to Christ somehow, but specifically, if you were going to say, do A, B, C, and D, it's one thing to say, well, Jesus, help me. It's another thing to pick up your scriptures. It's another thing to hit your knees. It's what things have helped you and you feel like would help them when they're struggling in today's culture.
Believe Christ is your friend.
The friendship.
And
okay.
Treat him as a friend. And understand that he is always there right beside you. And try never to say anything or do anything that would embarrass him as a friend.
Mm-hmm.
So you bring him into your world. You don't, if somebody said something that you think is not right about your friend, then stand up for him and say, I don't think that's right. You don't have to get into an argument over it,
right.
And you don't have to get into a fight. It's really called doing the next right thing. If we don't have to worry about tomorrow, we don't have to worry about doing everything, the rest of our life perfect. It's just that I treat both Christ and Jody, my wife, the same, and I had to learn this throughout the years, and that how I treat them is they are my friend. Jody is my friend. She is my wife, she is my closest friend, but she is my friend, and she's always standing beside me. even though she's in another country or in another state or at home and I'm away, she is my friend.
Right.
And she's always listening to every single word that I say. And I wouldn't want to say anything that would embarrass her. I wouldn't want to say anything that would hurt her feelings. I wouldn't want to say anything, well, John, why would you say that? That's not true.
Right.
I wouldn't want Bruce to say something about Jody that I knew that wasn't true. And not answer that. Because if I don't answer it, then I agree with it. Just through my silence, I actually agree with it.
Right.
So if somebody says something about my friend Jesus Christ, who is my friend, and takes me to the Father and lets me go to the Father,
right.
I don't want anybody to say anything, and I don't want to say anything. I personally don't want to do anything, say anything that would embarrass him.
So by saying nothing, you're saying that by saying nothing and keeping your mouth shut, you're also agreeing.
Yeah.
I think that's a great way.
With that person.
That's a great way to look at that.
And so yeah, I think that's very important.
Okay. How do you define noble manhood?
I don't. Christ does.
Okay. How would you say Christ defines noble manhood?
I didn't know Terry Kirk before he was actually assassinated.
Okay, by the way, it's not Terry Kirk, it's Charlie Kirk.
Charlie Kirk.
That's all right, I got you.
I'm thinking, I knew a lady that worked for him, Terry Kirk.
Okay.
So anyway, Charlie Kirk.
Yeah.
So I knew little to nothing about him prior to it.
Okay.
So after his assassination, I started digging into it, just like a lot of people probably did.
Possibly.
Who is this person, And then one of the things that I heard him talk about, he was on a stage and there was a large audience, and this fellow was interviewing, and he said, I wonder why men wear the same suit when they get married as when they are buried. When they're dead and they're buried, they're wearing the same suit, same clothes, the same type of clothes, suit and tie, same type of clothes. Why do they do that? And women wear, they change. They wear a fancy dress, a beautiful white dress. It's really because when a man gets married, it's the same thing as in dying. He's dead. And of course the audience just exploded, What are you talking about? I said, well, wait a minute, let me explain it. When a man gets married, he actually dies.
Okay.
And what he dies of texting, other girls. He dies of looking at other girls. He dies, to his old self. There's so many things he dies of, No longer is he chasing around. No longer is he a bachelor. He dies to being a bachelor. He dies from being a boy to growing into manhood.
Okay.
So, it was a great example, of how when we, accept Christ in our life, we change.
Mm-hmm.
We need to change. We need to grow up. We need to stop doing the things that we were doing, and we become a new person. So I think that's how we deal with life going forward. We just do the best we can. The best we can is not one of us is going to be perfect the rest of our life.
Right.
I'd like to just try to be perfect the last half of my day. And so, or at the moment, just do the next right thing.
I like that phrase, do the next right thing. So some of the things you explained there, loyalty, monogamy, doing your best, do the next right thing.
Right.
So
being a father is different than being, a bachelor.
Right.
Right? That is huge. That's a
Significantly.
major difference. Yeah. And so you're dead to being a bachelor.
Right.
You're dead to texting women that are outside your marriage.
Yep.
You know, so there's just, you change from a boyhood, you change from that, into something else.
Right. And it's good. So there's a lot of young men that are afraid to make that change, I would say. And they're thinking that when they make that change, it's supposed to be just right. It's supposed to be perfect, right? And my thing is, it's not perfect. There is whatever picture you paint in your mind of the ideal has got to be this way. It just isn't. And no day to day is the same. And you have to ebb and flow and go with it and navigate it day to day. That becoming a man and navigating it in today's world of being a nobleman is a life of constant change, but the change is the adventure, and the adventure is where the strength is. You don't get stronger in something by staying stagnant and staying still. And looking back, there were times that I used to regret that I didn't go and see the world before I got married. But at the same time, I can't imagine the times that I've lived in Europe and the various places I've been in America. I can't imagine doing that without my family. Having my family with me is what made it so wonderful.
Right.
So a lot harder to lug kids around Europe, but that's also what creates the better memories, because I wasn't alone. It's not about me anymore.
Right.
So noble manhood has a lot. I think the best thing that God taught me just a couple days ago is, Bruce, it's not about you.
Right.
Done. It's not about you.
Right.
In manhood, in noble, godly manhood, it's not about you.
Right. And that's what life is. It's not about us, because us isn't good enough. Us isn't enough.
Right.
To live our life for.
Yeah. So here's a couple fun questions just to end it. What's your favorite Bible character other than Jesus Christ? What's your favorite Bible character?
Well, I certainly like Peter.
Okay, Peter.
I
could see that actually.
Because he was a fighter, and he wanted to fight. He wanted to make things happen. He wanted to fight for Christ when Christ wanted him, to live for Christ.
Uh-huh.
There's a difference. So I think Peter was really good. He was, he had to change a lot, and he had to grow a lot. Mm-hmm. Probably as much, if not more, than any of the other disciples.
But Christ knew what he was capable of, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I love that.
And it was important to him.
Mm-hmm.
Peter was important to Christ.
Yeah. And
Christ got after him several times.
I was going to say more than once.
Right. And so, you can't have, you can't be a Christian and accept everything.
Right.
In our culture, what has happened is we have switched, from God to the of being, a father and a guide, and a discipliner, to a God of mercy and forgiveness.
Right.
Well, for sure, God is a God of love, mercy, and forgiveness. But he also draws lines.
Yeah, absolutely. Because he loves.
Right. And the punishment is there.
Right.
If you don't do what he says, then you're going to reap those rewards, and even he's going to punish us, even as he has done Israel.
Right.
He hasn't forsaken Israel, and Israel is still, Americans are not his chosen people. Mm-hmm. The Israelites are, and that will never change. But he is sure reprimanded them and scolded them and gotten after them and set out punishment for their being stiff-necked and wanting to do it their way.
Right.
He said, hey, wait a minute. I am the chosen one. I am Israel. I am the chosen one. We are God's people.
Right.
But he has certainly corrected them as a nation as much, if not more, than any other nation. He has corrected other nations, for going against Israel. He has destroyed other nations. The Babylonian Empire. He destroyed it.
Right.
Because he allowed them. He guided them toward Israel. But yet, because they destroyed it, he destroyed them, and they were one of the first world dominations.
Right.
So anyway,
So Peter.
Yeah.
Peter's one of your favorites.
Peter's one of my favorites because he's both fallible. He wants to fight. He wants to protect God, but yet he has to learn, where his place is.
I just put down fallible with an underline. I like that you pointed out he's fallible.
Yeah.
It's okay to be fallible. Hey, that's part of the journey, right?
Right.
Okay. One horse that you'll never forget.
Oh, the Appaloosa that I started with, basically, early in my career. It's an Appaloosa.
What was the horse's name?
Zip. Z-I-P. Yeah.
Okay.
And so the reason is I spent more time with that horse than I did any other living thing on earth in my time, in my life. So we spent a lot of time together. We went through a lot of experiences together. I counted on him. I needed him at different times to be able to get the job done that I needed to get done.
Mm-hmm.
And he also was my friend. So he...
Now, I got to pause you. You said you spent a lot of time with Zip. Is that because Zip needed a lot of work, or Zip was just reliable?
It was just the time in my life.
Okay.
I got him when I started ranching. I needed him at that time. He was just a baby when I got him, so I brought him up that way. And I needed him to get jobs done on the ranch. When I started showing with him, I needed him to be, to do well in the show arena. When I started clinics, I definitely needed him to get my job done, to get certain horses started and problem solved and that.
So he helped other horses as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he helped me get a job done. When it required more strength than I had, he was the strength. When it required more legs than I had, he was my legs.
I appreciate some of the things you're saying about Zip, and I can tell your reactions that Zip's important to you. You spent more time with Zip. Zip was a worker, a show horse, helped other horses, and he was strong. And I immediately think, I do a self-reflection when you say that, and I think, well, am I a worker? Am I a shower? Am I willing to help the other horses? Am I strong enough to do the task that my master needs? And so you're talking about Zip, and this is one of the things I wanted to find, is because it allows me to self-reflect. Who's John's favorite horse? And can I try to be one of God's favorites?
Right.
Can I be there for God, and what does that look like? And so you describe these things about Zip, and that allows me to self-reflect. So it was semi-selfishly motivated to ask you about Zip.
That's great, and that is also covered in Daniel. And how it's covered in Daniel is God at one point in time, Daniel was praying to him to let the Israelites go back to Jerusalem.
Mm-hmm.
And it was at the end of the 70 years.
Right.
And so it was within God's will anyway. God wanted the Israelites to go back to Jerusalem. So it was, again, Daniel was praying, but praying within God's will. All right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
When Daniel finished the prayer, he said to God, please let, work to make this happen. God answered him instantly, by having Gabriel, I believe, come to him as an angel and saying to him, before when he finished the prayer, Gabriel, he immediately showed to him and said, I have already been sent, it's already going to happen.
Right.
And then he said something that was very important. Daniel, God knows your name. All right? So really, Bruce, that's what you just said. If I do this and this and this and I do this, I want to be a good worker for God. And God will recognize that by knowing your name.
Mm-hmm.
He knows your name. So you don't want to be one of the group that just drifts along through life. You want to be a worker for Christ. And a worker
Okay, I'm going to pause and say that a little louder in case you didn't hear it. You don't want to be one of the group that just drifts along. You want to be a worker for Christ. Okay, keep going.
All right. And therefore, he will recognize you. He will know you by name.
Mm-hmm.
So it's...
and he'll spend more time with you because you're constantly engaged, constantly involved.
Right.
And I'm sure Zip actually enjoyed that with you as well.
Exactly.
I like that. Do you listen to a lot of music?
No, because I can't hear very well, so I can't hear the words.
What about in the past?
About what?
About like 5,000 years ago when you were a kid?
Yeah. Do I listen?
Did you listen to music then?
Music? Yeah, sure.
Okay. What's your favorite song of all time? If you don't have one, that's all right. But if you do, I'm interested to know.
Well, actually, I can bring that up closer to now. I like, and I can't even tell you who the singer is, but it's In the Eye of the Storm.
In the Eye of the Storm.
Right.
Yeah. I have no idea who that is either, but I know the song.
Right. So in the eye of the storm,
okay.
He remains in control.
Uh-huh.
In the middle of the war.
Yep.
He's got my soul.
Yep.
When...
Great song.
When I'm in the middle of the storm without a rudder, he is my rudder. Mm-hmm. He is my... I can't even think of it. I should be able to think of it. If I started singing, I'd probably remember it.
Maybe. It sounds like you're like me. You remember a few words here and there, but not the whole thing. And when you sing along, you sing the parts that you know, and then you go, ha, ha, ha.
That's what I do in church.
Yeah.
So I for sure do that in church.
Best piece of advice you ever got from someone else?
Best, boy, that's a good one. The best piece of advice. I don't know. I think it's a cumulative. That would be like asking me what is my most favorite scripture. I don't know.
Okay. Some people have them, some people don't.
Right. Be still and know that I am God. Sit still and know you're okay.
Was there any advice that anyone ever gave you that became a tipping point in your life to help lead you along?
I think there were probably, honestly, Bruce, I think there were thousands of pieces of advice and examples from other people. I try, like you, I try to learn from other people's experiences. I try to learn, from my own mistakes. I try not to repeat the same mistakes. I think that, you have to be a rock and you have to be a marshmallow all at one time, wrapped up in one. You have to be soft enough to listen and to value other people's opinions. You have to be strong enough to make your own decisions.
Okay, so we'll say that's the favorite advice you've ever received. Be a rock and a marshmallow at the same time. Soft enough to receive other people's opinions, strong enough to make your own.
Right.
I like
Right.
it. What's the funniest thing that your wife has ever done that made you laugh?
Well, we have an Airbnb, and so she had just started, and that was kind of her thing to do the Airbnb. And so she just started it. It was kind of almost, I think, in the middle of COVID, or I think it was after 9/11. Actually, is when I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, sometime in there, and so she gets the first guest, all right, and they're from Arabia, India, we don't know, all right, but they don't speak English very well, and she has this vivid imagination that everything is going to go wrong, and she can instantly, they call it catastrophizing, that some little thing can go wrong, and she instant blows it up until it's a massive, wreck. So anyway, so now she's decided to do this Airbnb, and here these people come that she's not too sure of. She think maybe, they're here to kill us, that, it's just gonna go on and on. So we go to bed that night, all right? She wakes up, she thinks she hears something downstairs.
Okay.
All right. She knows it's them. They're going to kill us. All right. So she goes to the banister. She had gotten this bear spray or pepper spray.
Okay.
All right. So she's going. It's in January. She's going to spray this pepper spray down the stairway. And our basement is about the same size as yours. It's huge.
Okay.
All right. And so she's going to spray this pepper spray. Well, again, it's...
Wait, but they're staying downstairs?
No, they're staying in another house.
Oh, okay.
That we have, And so she's going to spray them, all right? And that way they won't come up the stairs. They'll leave the house, whatever she's thinking. So
has she ever sprayed pepper spray at this point?
Absolutely not. So she sprays this pepper spray down the stairway. Well, it's winter. The furnace comes on. And of course, where does the heat go? It goes up. It carries the air up. So now she's got this pepper spray in her face, and she is gasping and just, her eyes are watering. So she runs outside, all right? She's in her underwear. And so she's trying to breathe outside. She says, and she smokes, and she says, well, as long as I'm out here, I might as well have a cigarette. So she's having a cigarette. It's in January. She's in her underwear. And she gets to thinking, oh no, John, this pepper spray is going to come in and get John. So she comes running back in, she jumps on the bed, she straddles me, and I don't have my hearing aids in, I can't hear nothing. She takes a pillow and she shoves it over my head. And of course, it's funny, but I wake up and here she's trying to smother me with this pillow. What are you doing? And she says, it's okay. I had a pepper spray accident. So that is my wife. In a moment, she can go through this traumatic experience without ever getting her toes stepped on. It's all of a sudden she's in the emergency room. So she keeps me entertained by doing that.
No. To anybody, I actually hope to have Jody here to interview her as well. Jody is a saint. I absolutely love the woman on so many levels. That is hilarious.
Yeah, she is. She's pretty cool. She's amazing.
I mean, my cheeks hurt.
Yeah, she's an amazing person. She's a nurse. Was a nurse for 25 years, and she loves people and she loves helping people. She's just, but all of that emergency room stuff and all of that trauma care and all of that planted all of these bad things in her head.
Right.
You know, so, but actually that is a issue that people have. It's called catastrophizing.
Right.
You take a splinter and you make it a forest.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Well, tell everybody goodbye. John, you are the first person that I've interviewed at Stripling. I'll touch base with you later if there's anybody you feel like I should bring in for the same thing. I want you to know that I appreciate our friendship. I appreciate you as being a man of God, but particularly I appreciate you being a man of God who is also a man of action. When you told me that Peter is one of your favorites, I can see Peter in you. You're very much a go-getter, a go-doer, and I'm grateful that you had that moment in your past where the Mustang is in the ring and you had the courage to step out. And I love the prayer that you had, and then you said you continued to have, God, don't let them see me, but help them see you through me. I love that. That was just absolutely wonderful. So thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
You're
Bye. I
welcome.
hope you guys enjoyed it.
John gets a hug. Appreciate you, man.
You bet. Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it. What an honor.